a story about you from someone we both know. She said she saw you with another man down at the picture show. Well, that was the day when I started to cry, and I know that there's no denying you're breaking my heart one kiss at a time. I came home with roses and a bottle of wine. You told me I was your only man, and I believe you, 'cause love is blind. And then you made sweet love to me. There was someone else on your mind. You're breaking my heart one kiss at a time. Why don't you just get on with it? Walk out and leave me crying. There's a waiting, there's a killing me. I'm going out of my mind. Thing I really hate about you is the way you treat me so fine. You're breaking my heart one kiss at a time. At a time. You're breaking my heart one kiss at a time.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? That is George Wolf from a project called Lone Wolf Country, and he is a musician from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Are those their parts about? For those of you that are joining us in the chat room, you can do that. George and I have had a couple of connectivity challenges tonight. George, can you hear me now? He still can't hear me. So he's having some issues being able to hear me, but I can hear him and you'll be able to hear him. Maybe we can sign language him through tonight's show. We'll see if we can get this. Too bad things aren't closed caption here where he could actually see what I'm saying, because that would probably help him a great deal. That's George's single from Lone Wolf Country. That tune is called One Kiss at a Time. That comes out February the 14th. We got a bunch of music that's actually dropping on February the 14th. We have a few songs that are coming out, and I'm going to have to kind of go through the list here because there's a whole bunch of music we've been putting out the last little while, and there's a lot of stuff that's actually going live this Friday, being Valentine's Day, the 14th of February. And so I want to make sure that I don't miss any of these. So I'm going to have to kind of go through these one at a time. And you're going to have to bear with me while I just kind of go back and forth as I look at these, because we have releases coming out every week or two right now. There's a whole bunch of new music that's coming out from a whole bunch of different artists that are coming out. Some are a month apart, some are coming out much further than that apart. But we've got a whole bunch of songs coming out the end of this month, some coming out on the 14th of this month. We got a tune called Related coming out by Brother Leeds. That is off their album, their upcoming album, The Ugly Carnival. So you're going to want to check that out when that gets full digitally released here. We've had a whole bunch of other music that's come out, and I've just got to keep going through the list here. February the 14th, Desperado Lover by GM Blacktop comes out, and that's going to hit all download and streaming services on February the 14th. We got another tune called Will You Be Mine? That is by a band called Damsel. They are from the West Coast, the opposite of where we're talking from George tonight. So we'll see what happens as we go further into the evening. And we'll be talking about, a whole bunch of songs that are going to get released, ongoingly forward as we keep moving, forward. We've got this tune called One Kiss at a Time. It is by Lone Wolf Country. It drops everywhere this Friday. So please do it a kind, stream it, download it, save it to your library, and get your friends to save it to their library. It's a cool tune. And what struck me most about this track is that, Lone Wolf Country is country. I heard a lot of, a real sort of rock blues influence in that tune. We're going to talk about the guy that wrote it tonight. We're going to talk to his face. His name is George Wolf. He is a guy who comes from Halifax, Nova Scotia. He's steeped in music. He eats, breathes, and sleeps it, I think. And his wife would probably tell me that his clothes smell like it as well. This is our friend George Wolf from the East Coast, Halifax. Hey, George, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good to have you on the show tonight.
Glad to be here.
So you're out in Halifax, making cool music. I'm going to get rid of it because for some reason it's keeping me and you from connecting. So just get rid of the video here, and then we'll see if we can get you and I up here together. There we are.
There we go.
Yeah. So you're out in Halifax tonight. That's where you call home, right? You've played music around there most of your life.
Well, I was actually born out here. I went back and forth from Toronto to Nova Scotia until I was in my late teens. And then I moved to Toronto, got into the scene out there. And then I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia for 24 years. But I moved home in 2019.
So you've been in a whole bunch of different places that were melting pots for music.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, every style of music, too. I mean, I've played blues, rockabilly, country, new country, old country.
Now, why does an Eastern musician decide to go to Toronto? What is the attraction of going to Toronto? Is that like an actor moving to Hollywood?
I graduated high school, and 3 days later, I was on the train. I couldn't get out of rural Nova Scotia fast enough.
So
I just wanted this. I wanted this. My dad lived in Toronto. My mom lived in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
So I had a place to go. I had people to live with, and I just wanted to be in the big city and see what was going on.
And so the big city lights attracted you. Toronto had what year was that you moved there?
It would have been 82.
So a pretty vibrant music scene in Toronto.
Scene. Really great scene, yeah.
There were a whole lot of really, really great clubs in Toronto. I remember a club downtown. Oh, I'm trying to think of where it was called. It was called the Joker. Do you remember it?
No, I remember the Big Bop was a 3-story building that had a different bar on every floor.
Right.
The Royal Albert was the blues club, and then the Muddy Duck, a couple other places like that. the Horseshoe Tavern was just iconic. And then, Lee's Palace for rock. Lee's Palace was great. RPMs was a big dance club back in the 80s. So I saw them all.
So you got to see a lot of really great live music there as well.
Yeah. And some great, like Downchild was playing weekly in Toronto. You could go see Downchild Blues Band any day of the week almost. And a place called the Chicken Deli on Mount Pleasant that had like Paul Schaefer was the house keyboard player before he was on the Late Show. It just
Right.
Yeah, just some fabulous musicians. Alfie Zappacosta.
Good old Canadian boy.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the sister duo called Larkin Poe?
I am. They're fabulous.
We should hook you up with them.
Oh, man, I would love to write with people of that caliber.
They did a cruise with Paul Schaefer, right?
Oh yeah, cool.
And it's on YouTube. It's killer. Those two girls, I've followed them since the beginning of their career. And two really, 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 they're actually related to Poe, the writer.
Oh, really?
Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan. Wow.
Yeah, they're related to Edgar Allan Poe somehow. They're distant relatives of Edgar Allan Poe. And they came up with this cool name, Larkin Poe. And I mean, killer guitar players. The sister that plays the lap steel is killer.
Yeah. They're just that's the what gives me hope for good music is people like that are doing their own thing and writing thoughtful lyrics and really good music, and not just the same generic Gerber baby food that comes out of the music industry.
Yeah, I want to see you write some. I know a couple of really you probably know a couple of really good slide players, but I know a couple of really good slide players, and I'd love you to write some music that could feature some slide on it.
Yeah. John Campbell here in Halifax is fabulous. And John Hines, who I play bass for, actually, really, really good slide player as well.
Yeah, there's a guy you should check out. His name's Jesse Nestor.
Oh yeah.
Nestor, and he's from London, and he went down and spent a ton of time doing work with all kinds of musicians down in Nashville. And he's an accomplished lap steel player.
Very cool. Yeah.
He's a talented dude. His dad was a local musician here. It's interesting how people, come from musical families. How does that work for you?
My mom was a songwriter. Had some songs on the radio actually back in the day. There was a couple of brothers from Pictou County named Jim and Don Haggard recorded one of her songs, and that went number 11 in Canada. Played it on Hee Haw back when that was on the air. And then a local singer-songwriter named Lenny Mason recorded some of her songs and did really well. I think I still got the vinyl somewhere, actually. So yeah, I've got another sister who her stage name is Milligram. Her real name is Mary Grace, and she's an independent kind of almost, I don't know what you would say, independent hip hop / soul / techno singer. She's in Montreal right now, and she's got some really great music. In fact, she's got some new stuff coming out as well.
So as kids, did you guys get to listen to all different kinds of music? Did your parents expose you to all that stuff, or how did that work?
Oh, my dad was old country Hungarian. So when he would sit down at his Lowry organ and he would play Tony Bennett and Edelweiss and Nat King Cole and things like that. So I got exposed to a lot of really cool classic kind of jazz standard stuff from him. And then my mom was straight Bob Dylan and Arlo Guthrie and Leonard Cohen and things like that.
Right.
My musical influences were like wide.
Right. Oh my God. So yeah, I mean Arlo Guthrie. Wow, that's way out there.
Yeah. Well, anything, and then especially like protest music and things like that. My mom was straight hippie right from the get go. So I got to hear a lot of stuff that my dad didn't necessarily agree with, but my
Right.
mom would play me one thing and my dad would play me something else.
Right. Wow. That's
And I
really
kind of did the
cool.
same thing for my kids too. I mean, the, when I bought my son his first vinyl record player, uh, I got him "Circle Beyond Broken" by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and Pink Floyd, "The Wall" or "Dark Side of the Moon," and I think it was I think the third album he got was uh, I want to say it was heavy metal. It was some kind of heavy metal.
You know, it's really interesting because every artist that is on the Indie Tunes record label, and this is the pleasure that I get by working with so many of you, is that you all come from such varied musical backgrounds and varied musical exposures, and how some of that finds its way into your creative juices. You know, one of the bands on the label is called Newport Electric.
Hmm.
Where do you think they got that name from?
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Newport Jazz Festival. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the whole Bob Dylan thing going electric, right? And Dylan for them as a writer is an influence, right? The other influence is Gordon Downey from the Tragically Hip.
Yeah.
So it's
And Gordon
really,
Lightfoot. And Gordon
yeah,
Lightfoot's a huge influence.
it's really interesting how you know people's writing and their sound comes from a lot of influences, and everybody on the label without question had those mainstream influences before they, you know, were thinking about being creators themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have to say, as a writer, my biggest influence had to be my mom. I even play guitar the way she plays it. I have her strum with my thumb the way that she played it.
Right.
But I mean, I was lucky enough to have so many different influences that, which is why, like the new single isn't country. I don't consider myself just a country artist. I consider myself a multi-genre artist, and I'll be just as happy releasing a blues album as I will releasing the next country album. So
It's interesting. A buddy of mine that I knew here years ago, I used to play guitar with him, and I played bluegrass with him. And his name was Bob Jones. He was from your neck of the woods, and he was a champion banjo player. And him and I used to play bluegrass tunes all the time. Here I am, a rocker, but I'm playing bluegrass with this dude. He ended up, you know, he was a family friend, and I got to know him really well. And he introduced me to bluegrass, and I had a blast playing with him.
oh, those guys can pick, man.
Oh man, he taught me some really quick guitar stuff. Eh,
Yeah, yeah.
I could not keep up to him. He was so good. You know, I mean, East Coast guys growing up in the East Coast, you're exposed to so many different types of music, and then there's all that traditional stuff too.
Well, and one of the things I've always noticed out here is you can walk in anybody's house and there's a guitar behind the door. There's a guitar sitting in the corner. Everybody
Right.
plays, whether they play good or not.
Right.
They don't have any fear of just picking the guitar up and playing.
We got some interesting people on in our chat room tonight. These are people who watch us religiously. Dean Boharnish, Corinne, thanks for joining us. Elizabeth Miller. Elizabeth's got a question here. Elizabeth is one of our faithful watchers, and she says, "Is the live music scene in Nova Scotia fully live with fully live vocals and instruments and everything?" She wants to know if you're using backing tracks. I think.
I I know it happens, but like by and large, I would have to say that everybody's doing it live down here because let's face it, you got to put a lot of money into backing tracks. If you're a recording artist, maybe somebody's paying for that, but I mean, it's not easy. It's not cheap. Uh, and if you've got good musicians around you, why would you ever use backing tracks?
Yeah, my understanding.
I've been using them since I remember walking into a club in the 80s and seeing this keyboard player playing this amazing stuff on the keyboards. And I walked up beside the side of the stage and she had her fingers underneath the piano keys and the sequencer was playing the keyboards. And not the first time I ever saw it. But you would spend hours programming that stuff into it. Like it was a
That's
lot of work just to do it. And
that's
still,
absolutely.
like,
I
you
mean,
know,
I could understand bigger bands like Rush using backing tracks only to reproduce stuff that they couldn't produce live. I mean, it's impossible. All of the things that they did on their recordings was almost impossible to reproduce live. So they had to depend on some level of backing track. But the backing track was never them.
no.
It was other instruments to fill it out.
Yeah, well, there's always a section of the musical public that is going to disagree with it, and then there's other people that are going to agree with it. But the bottom line is, if you want the live to sound just like the record, then sometimes you just have to play the record in the background. But if you've got good musicians that can do that, I did a show years ago opening for what's his name? So my brain is gone tonight. Randy Travis, and we were in the green room waiting, and they were doing their sound check, and all of a sudden I heard backing tracks, and I went, "Oh my God, they're playing backing track for Randy Travis!" And I walked out of the door, and it was his band playing live, and they were that good that they sounded like backing tracks. So if you have access to those kind of musicians, and they can all get paid, why use backing tracks?
That's a thing. I mean, like I said, there's a difference. There's different ways of using backing tracks. Like you said, some of them are replacing the actual musicians that are on stage. There are others that are actually adding fill-ins. And there's a huge difference between fill-ins and musicians on stage. So if you're adding in, a cello, or you're adding in an instrument that is not on stage, you're augmenting what you're playing, but you're
Absolutely.
you're essentially playing it all. And I think what most people are is someone who's actually lip syncing to their own vocals, for example, or playing air guitar to their own guitar riffs.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I mean those are completely. That's like an apples and oranges approach to this whole thing. But for the most part, when I see people live, it's live. I'm not seeing anything that's artifact at all.
Can you do me a favor? Tell
Yep.
I don't know how to reply on the chat here, but tell Dean
Yep.
Boharn that I do know Michael Lloyd, and I write with Kevin Dakin. So,
Oh, this one here,
yeah,
where he says, "I've never met you yet. I'm assuming being in Halifax, you know such people as Michael Lloyd, Kevin Dakin, and many more local artists here." And that's
yeah,
really weird. That's at 3 degrees of separation.
yeah. Is he in relation to Jolene?
I don't know.
Jolene Harnish, yeah.
I don't know. Deanbo, you can tell us if you're relation to Jolene.
Yeah.
You guys did a farce takeoff on that song, did you not?
Yeah, it's on the album. We didn't release it online because I didn't want to deal with lawyers, but it's just a parody. But it's a good. It's for Colleen Farrell, who owns Colleen's Pub up in Dartmouth,
Right.
and so it's called Colleen, and it is on the album, and it's funny. It's a little, I wouldn't say R-rated, but it's definitely PG-14.
Yeah, I've listened to it. It's pretty good. I liked
Yeah.
it. I thought it was pretty good. Whose idea was it to do that?
Oh, well, we used to play a club called the Perfect Pour, and she was the bartender there. When the owner sold it, she decided to open her own bar, so that the song was kind of written about her at the Perfect Pour. And then when she got her own bar, I added a third verse, and it was all about her. It was, and in actual fact, I was really afraid when the first time I played it. I'm playing it. She loved the song, but I look over, and her partner is sitting at the bar, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm dead." But
He wasn't
but
impressed.
oh no, he was fine with it. I can't play anywhere where people know Colleen and not play that song anymore. So
The funny thing about that song is that's a great drinking song, man.
It is. It
I mean,
is.
it's a great song to play when people are really partying in a pub. I think it'd get them going, especially if you did a kind of cool introduction to the song when you play it live. That's definitely a live song for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you include that in your live sets?
Always. Yeah. Yeah. Always. I mean, I won't play it if I'm in a room where nobody knows who
Right,
Colleen is, or if there's kids in the room, I'll clean it up a
right.
little bit. But generally speaking, and anytime I play at her bar, uh, that song definitely comes out. So
It's interesting. We could see if we could apply for the mechanicals on that. I mean, because it is a great song. I think it's a song that could actually go viral. Because it's so close to Jolene, man.
I'd love to make a video for it. It's just a matter of reaching out to, Dolly's people and making sure that they don't sick a restraining order on me.
Well, I could apply for, like I said, I can apply for digital licensing on your behalf, and it comes back as a yes or a no. Typically, it's always a yes. I haven't had one request turned down ever.
And I've seen a dozen parodies of Jolene on
Yeah, and
YouTube,
so I think if you do it this way, they just make sure you've got to pay the blanket licensing fee, but it's not a very expensive fee. We're talking like $20 a year to license it.
oh, let's do it.
So
Let's do it. I'd love to get it here.
it might be fun to put it out there, so we can see if we can get the mechanicals on that. The song is called Colleen. And if you've ever heard the Dolly Parton version of Jolene, this is even better because it's funny as hell. I was laughing all the way through it, listening to the lyrics.
Yeah, it gets a few good looks, that's for sure.
It's kind of like that song, "Who the Fuck Is Alice?" Right? Did you guys ever play that?
I've been in bands that played that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great song, man. It gets people involved, and everybody knows the lyrics.
Yeah, it becomes a big sing along about halfway through the song. And in fact, in the studio, I had all the guys in the band singing, and even my wife came in and sang on the backing tracks. And I was really happy about it because it just adds that sense of authenticity to it that everybody's singing along.
So when you do that, that Colleen, the whole repeat.
Yeah.
On the video, it should be 4 different people singing it separately.
Yeah.
Like where it pans to them, right, singing it, and then at one point it's all of them on the screen.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if I was ever going to do a video for that, I would shoot it at Colleen's pub.
Yeah, it'd be a great song to shoot and bring up a whole bunch of friends in as extras. It'd be a blast. And the thing is, you could film the whole thing on smartphones. Yeah. I know a guy that can take that. I know a guy who can take that smartphone stuff and turn it into a wonderful video for you.
Yeah.
The guy does all of the videos for Helix.
Oh, cool.
Brent Durner, who's the original lead guitar player for Helix, he's offered to help me make videos for artists on the label.
Oh, good.
He owns a company called Red D Film, and he's been making videos for years. So, yeah, you won't find Colleen's not on YouTube, is it?
You won't find the album version of it, but there's some live versions of it from. Oh, okay. I believe it's been posted from the. It's unfortunate I can't post to this chat.
The only downside of it sometimes is that it's not necessarily a good recording, so it's not always flattering.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the only downside of it, and that's what I found out recently why Brian Adams gets videos pulled down of him singing live.
Oh, wow.
If the recording isn't good and it's a really shitty recording and it doesn't show his image very well, there's a whole bunch of things, they'll get it pulled down.
It's funny you say that because I remember being in Vancouver and Colin James did a live version. He was up in Whistler at a bar, and he did a live version of what the "We Were Born Before the Wind."
Oh yeah, yeah.
That song, and they played it live on the radio, and then he immediately contacted them and said, "Listen, I'm remixing it. I'm fixing some vocal mistakes I made, and a couple of guitar licks. So don't play that version anymore, and I'll send you my live version." So he actually touched it up in the studio, and
Yeah,
then
a lot of
and
guys do
released it.
that. A
Yeah.
lot of guys have done that stuff
Hey,
because
Kiss Live. There's nothing live about Kiss Live.
no, Kiss Alive was but here's the interesting thing. By the time they got Kiss Alive done, I heard them on that tour. It sounded just like the album.
Yeah.
And they weren't using backing tracks then either.
No.
When I saw them on that tour, it sounded just like the album because I just about wore out the album by the time I saw them on tour. So interesting stuff. So you live a life steeped in music. This particular song that we are featured tonight on the show, One Kiss at a Time, that really to me has like a blues rock feel to it.
I like to think Motown.
Yeah, there's that the aspect to it as well. There's definitely a Motown feel to it as well. The guitar playing in there the guitar playing there reminds me of a buddy of mine that has a jump blues band, and his guitar playing is a lot like that.
Yeah. Well, Thomas Meissen, he's my guitar player in Lone Wolf Country, and he could turn around and he played blues with the best of them. He could play bluegrass like you wouldn't believe. He's just a masterful guitar player. So he ripped off most of those guitar licks in one or two takes in the studio. And then actually Shirley Jackson, who's a local legend around here on the blues scene, she played all the sax parts on there.
Yeah, the sax parts are really boom.
Yeah.
They're right on the money.
Yeah, and Graham Howes on the Hammond organ. So he came in the studio and absolutely blew me away with how well he could play. And he does a Tom Waits tribute every once in a while. He does that really well too. But everybody was even I had my two sisters sang backups on that song. That's why we kind of arranged it to sound kind of Motown with the girls in the background.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a Motown feel to it. There's no doubt about that. But there's definitely a blues rock feel to it as well. There's some really interesting things going on in the whole rhythm section on that. Who is your drummer on that project?
Cameron Palmer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you're playing the bass on that.
Yep. Yeah.
And so you and him have got a nice chemistry going on there in that song.
We lock in. So we play in this band. We played in at least two other bands, and we both currently play with him in the John Hines Blues Trio. John Hines is we just came back from Memphis where we went down. We're in the International Blues Challenge, representing the Maritimes, and made the semifinals, which is a first for a Canadian band. So
here's something about you. You're kind of like the Jimi Hendrix of bassists, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, you play your bass guitar upside down, right?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few guys that do it. I'm actually in a Facebook group of 75 to 80 bass players who play that way. But I would say Keith Horn is probably the most prominent of those guys. So he played with Donna Summer, Tanya Tucker, Trisha Yearwood. He's played on the Grand Ole Opry.
How much easier it when you play the bass upside down like that? Okay, so you're playing a right-handed bass, left-handed.
No, I'm playing a left-handed bass, strung right-handed.
Oh, you're playing a left-handed bass,
yeah,
strung right-handed.
Yeah, so the low string is on the bottom.
Right. So how does that feel different? Is it make it easier to play accent notes and stuff like that?
It's harder when I play guitar because I have to hang my thumb over the neck to get my G chord.
Okay.
But for bass, it's a real advantage. It puts all the low notes right where I want them to be. I really enjoy it. It's a bit of a challenge for playing funk as far as like slapping and popping, but the
Right.
guys that play that stuff are very, very good at it.
Right. So the setup on that guitar would be very much different than it would be if it was strung the opposite way around.
Yeah, you have to redo the bridge and the nut uh, because anytime I buy a new bass, I have to get a little work done to it. So
And you'd have to change the relief in the neck as well.
a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually, so if what's fortunate is my son, who's a recording engineer, has also worked for a few years at Long and McQuaid as a guitar tech. So he does all my guitar work for me. So
Well, that's awesome. I mean, it's nice to have someone in the family that can help you with the guitar tech stuff.
free too.
Yeah. Hey, you know the old saying, ask grass or gas, nothing is for free.
Yeah.
Somewhere you gotta pay somehow. Or is it,
I usually feed him dinner. He does the work for me. So
there you go. There you go. There's a payback in there somehow, right?
yeah, yeah.
Right on. So you, like I said, you play the bass, what most people would consider an unorthodox approach to
Upside down,
playing
yeah.
bass
Yeah.
guitar. And yet for you it works.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was natural because when I first picked the bass up, I was 14 years old. I didn't have access to even a left-handed bass at the time. I took a right-handed bass and flipped it over and took a couple of weeks of lessons. And from then on, I was a bass player. So I learned on a righty flipped over anyways. I was probably 3 years into playing before I even bought a left-handed bass.
Brenda Ryan says we love George on the West Coast.
I love Brenda.
So you know her from your British Columbia days.
Yeah, yeah. Brenda works at the Frog. Oh my God, my brain is not working today. It's in White Rock, BC. It's
Right.
Brenda. Tell me what it's called.
We have another West Coaster, Corinne, and I think it's Krennic. I believe it's pronounced Krennic, and she is from the West Coast, and she works for one of the artists on our label called GM Blacktop. She does promotional work for him,
hmm
and a real smart cookie. Real smart cookie. She hasn't put anything back there yet, but she says, we love George on the West Coast.
Yeah,
So you're loved from coast to coast, George.
I am. I've got a lot of. I have to tell you, I moving to Nova Scotia was probably good for my career. Not so much that I become uh, a bigger fish. I wouldn't say I'm a bigger fish in a small pond, but I'm in a much smaller pond,
Right.
even if I'm a small fish.
So it says here, Crystal says, if you
Oh, yeah.
don't know George and want to see him play, he'll be at Colleen's Pub in Dartmouth this Sunday, 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're going to be at Colleen's Pub.
Yeah.
You have
Playing
to get her.
Colleen.
You need to get her up on the table. Get her up on the bar dancing.
Oh my God. I don't think we want to see that.
We had a favorite club owner here in St. Thomas. We used to play at his pub all the time, and he's still open after all these years. And he used to get up on the bar and dance when we were playing in the bar. It was fun to watch. He used to love the band, and some of the music that we played, he would jump up on the bar and start dancing, and people would start tipping him and the girls serving at the bar.
I played in a 6-piece Motown band in Toronto, and the sax player had a wireless mic on his saxophone, so he used to like to go out and play on the dance floor to the girls and stuff. And
Oh, nice.
It was a dance floor with a half wall around it, so he went to jump up on the half wall, thinking he was going to impress all these girls. And
Uh-oh.
the ceiling fan caught him in the top of the head and knocked him out cold.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys keep playing, or did you have to stop?
Oh, we kept going. He just laid there bleeding.
He took one for the team.
He took one for the team. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God,
He
that
got
is.
a lot of sympathy from the girls after that, though. So
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he
yeah,
did. He just didn't see the ceiling fan there.
no, no, not even a clue.
Oh man, that would have hurt. That would have hurt. Was he able to join you in the rest of the night, or did he have to pick
Yeah,
up
I
the rest of
keep
the night?
got a band-aid on there, got himself cleaned up, and got up finished the gig. So a true
Oh my,
professional.
oh my God, that's
So
funny. It's funny and also could have been tragic at the same time, right?
could have been, but yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Um,
I've seen more than a few accidents on stage in my time. So
no doubt, no doubt. You probably have some stories to tell about that. And usually, sometimes, not always, alcohol can get involved in that one. Said no
yeah,
one. Said no one. Said no one
I,
ever.
all I have to say is I'm really, really glad that when I was on the road touring, that nobody had cameras on their phones. So
Yeah, some crazy stuff happens when people actively tour. Now, when you went to Toronto and then decided to come back to Halifax, had you been out to BC before then as well?
well, so I like I said, I went to Toronto after high school, did a bunch of stuff there. Actually, came back to Halifax in the late '80s for a couple of years, and then went back to Toronto again. And then in '93 is when I went to BC. And I had never been there. Just I was in a band in Toronto. I was playing with a guy named Brent Lee, who's a legend on the West Coast. And we were playing in Toronto. And we had a gig lined up for the Calgary Stampede. And at the last minute, he said, "You want to just keep going from there and go out and live in BC?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And then I ended up there for 24 years. Played with him for six, almost seven.
And you've gotten the chance over those years to rub elbows with some pretty influential players, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been lucky enough. Well, I kind of made it my uh, early on. I realized that the only way I was going to get good was to try and play with people that I considered to be better than me. So even when I would hire guys, I would try to hire guys that I knew were, I wouldn't say out of my league, but that I always had to play up
Right.
to be in to stay up to keep up with these guys, and I've been really lucky. I mean, I on my first album I had Mike Sanderson, who's like I think a 5 or 6 time fiddle player of the year in Canada, and uh,
Right.
I've had some guys. Jay Bittner played guitar on a couple tracks, and he plays all over the world with some great Canadian recording artists. And I've really got to meet some great people. Kenny Hess, who is another guy that runs the biggest music festival out in BC, and another fabulous country singer who's been to Nashville and everybody knows his name. Um, yeah, I've been really, really lucky to be able to, like you said, rub elbows with some very cool people. And I played a lot of big festivals where just from being the opening act, you got to hang out backstage with all the headliners, and that was always cool. So
It's neat because you and I are kind of similar in that way. Uh, all three guys that I play with in my project, I consider them to be superior musicians to me. Um, and in different ways, like our drummer, for example, he's Mike Hackman. He's been a studio musician for years and years and years, played in road bands, toured all over the place, and our bass player, same thing. He's played everything from soup to nuts when it comes to, playing music. And then his first foray into um, you know, original music was with us. So all those musical influences have a huge impact on the writing style and the things that people bring to the table. Same as Brian, our guitar player. The guy's a virtuoso guitar player, but he has no preconceived notion of what or who he should be when it comes to playing. So he brings something really, really fresh to what we do. everybody brings something different, eh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, having a guitar player who can play, uh, on my first album, I had a bluegrass song. So you got a country album with a bluegrass song on it. Well, if you don't have to hire a different guitar player because this one guy can do everything, that's a real advantage. And then um, being able to play across the genres and across lines, it has its pros and cons. There's a reason I have a Lone Wolf Country Facebook page and a Lone Wolf Blues Facebook page. It's because I don't want to confuse the blues people by telling them I play country.
Yeah, and you do play
So
blues. I mean, you guys did the road to Memphis thing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, we go down to Barely's uh, and play it. We could play a whole night of country. We could play a whole night of blues, and we could do it 3 nights in a row and never play the same song twice. So
Right. So you play when you play live, you play blues with some people and you play country with other people, right?
sometimes I'll play blues and country with the same people in the same set.
Oh wow.
I keep
That's
everybody on their toes.
that's interesting. That's interesting.
I can tell you that a couple of weeks ago we played Johnny Cash and immediately afterwards played Papa Was a Rolling Stone.
Right.
So
That's interesting to be able to go to those different genres with the same guys that you're playing with, because that just speaks to the versatility of all the guys in the band.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then they're all guys that can pull that off. And if you remember the old uh, uh, quote from Buddy Rich that said, "If you can't walk into the studio and play exactly what's put in front of you, then don't call yourself a musician." He goes, "I don't care if you're a jazz guy, I don't care if you're a country guy. If someone calls you to go in the studio and they put a blues song in front of you or an R&B song, if you can't play it, don't call yourself a musician because you can't be in one genre." Now I'm just paraphrasing Buddy
Right.
Rich now,
Right.
but basically he says if you're just playing one genre, then you haven't explored everything that you can do. All of the really, really great Nashville drummers uh, uh, could all play jazz, could all play blues. All the great, really good, blues guitar players and things like that, all play country. You know,
Yeah, it's really interesting because that's the same as like where we don't go that far astray in genre, but we'll go from playing, we've written a couple of songs that I consider to be ballads, even though we're not a ballady band. We play more progressive rock than anything else. So for us to do something like that is so different from what people have come accustomed to listening to, but yet the song, if you listen to it, the way it's written, it follows a lot of the same writing style of the rest of our stuff. It's just conveyed using a different genre.
yeah. Well, I mean, you look at Beth. They bring up Kiss again. You look at Beth; it was their biggest hit, and it was in no way what anybody would consider a Kiss song, and yet, it was a massive song for them.
So we got a challenge to Elizabeth Miller says, come to Kitchener, maybe the Kitchener Blues Festival. I'd love to hear that kind of variety.
Might actually be coming to the Kitchener Blues Festival. I think that John Hines is actually working on it.
Right.
I know that we're working on another festival down in Niagara Falls there.
If you guys are coming down are you going to come doing this summer?
Possibly.
So Amherstburg is another place. They've got a festival, and Windsor's got a blues festival right down on the river.
Cool.
Almost directly across.
I think that's the one. Isn't that the one that Chuck Jackson runs? I think.
I believe so. It's right across from Caesars in Windsor.
Yeah.
Right on the Detroit River, and I think it'll hold like 5,000 people or something like that.
I believe we're working on that. John could tell you for sure, but I believe that's something we're trying to get. I think we're trying to get a bunch of stuff that we can do in hopefully it would be a whirlwind tour.
Yeah, we've had some really great stuff, down in this area in terms of the blues, because we had the Road to Memphis thing in London a while back too.
Yeah, yeah. I met some really great guys from Ontario. Actually, I believe the guy from Windsor, Mike McCann,
Okay,
um, was out there. When we were at the Blues Challenge in Memphis, we met a bunch of good bands from Ontario, and I think there was a couple bands from the prairies. They didn't send anybody from BC this year, but yeah, there was a band from Ottawa. There was a band from Windsor, and I think there was another band from somewhere else in Ontario as well. So
yeah, there's the Great Lakes Blues Society.
yes, they were there. Yeah.
Yeah, and did you ever meet a guy named Paul Bro?
I don't think so, but I met a bunch of people there that was just such a whirlwind of activity that was
Right.
going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I was looking to see if they have anything. These guys have anything digital, because I know you like to listen to a whole bunch of different stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. I like I said, I don't. It's surprisingly enough, I have a few influences that you would be, I wouldn't say shocked, but maybe pleasantly surprised. Um, I've got a couple
Who
of different rap artists that I'm really into.
who are
My,
those?
my
Who are those?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. My kids one day got into my phone, and just for kicks, they downloaded a bunch of Notorious B.I.G. onto my phone. And at first I was like, what the heck is this? And I was like, man, this guy can really, really write like good lyrics. Like,
Right,
and then Eminem is just a genius. I think he's one of the greatest writers of at least his generation.
right.
And then I'm into Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra, and I could sing you a whole night of Nat King Cole if I wanted to. Just uh, nobody will pay me to do it.
Well, it's funny. My daughter she's 24 years old, and she has a varied interest in music. I mean, I took her to her first Kiss concert when she was just a little kid, and she's been into a whole bunch of stuff since then. Alice Cooper, Def Leppard, and a whole bunch of others that she's seen live. But one of her favorites, believe it or not, is Kendrick Lamar. And
Hmm.
everybody bitching about Kendrick's performance on the Super Bowl halftime show. And if you understood his lyrical writing, he called everybody out.
Well, I know, and I've had my opinions, and then I've been told that I didn't look deeply enough into his performance to understand the nuances of what he was saying and what he was doing.
He
And
he called out the
and
whole
I understand why people that understood what he was saying would say those things. Uh, but because I've never heard a single song of his ever
right.
anywhere. So I had no idea what any of this symbolism was. So
So if
for
you
me,
if,
for
ju-
me the biggest problem was the fact that from an audio standpoint, I could barely make out any of what was going on, anyways. So
that's their poor mixing. Number one, that's their poor
yeah,
mixing on television. The other thing is that if you watch it on a streaming service, it gets terribly compressed on the streaming service. So
yeah. And I was watching it on the internet. I wasn't watching it on live cable or anything like
yeah,
that.
if you watch the playback to it, it's a much different performance. If he was a huge understudy of Dr. Dre, and my daughter listened to Dre back in back and when she first started listening to hip hop and rap. But here's a kid who she likes country to rap to metal. She likes everything. And but when she gets into any genre of music, she researches everybody she listens to.
Yeah.
And she'll tell you right to your face who the posers are and who the real deal is. And there's so many real deals that get cast off as being not the real deal when they really are, if people
Yeah.
research them, right?
Well,
And
I mean, I got a little annoyed when, that last couple of days, everybody's been posting on Facebook how he had more views than Michael Jackson. I was like, well, of course he did. The population of the United States was, 50 million less when Michael Jackson did the Super Bowl,
well,
and they didn't have streaming.
and it's
Uh,
changed. I mean, it's just like you said, you and your sister have varied interests in music,
yeah,
completely opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
very different. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the thing about is that hip hop has become a much bigger phenomena in the US than it has in most other countries, because hip hop and rap always became ways of people to express themselves. Because
Yeah.
it
Well, absolutely, and it's and it adds its own musical genre. It's um, it's got its own validity. It's got its own importance in the music world. That's not to say that it isn't being um exploited as much by the record companies as rock or anything else ever was. I mean,
no,
when
and
Elvis came out, they wanted to ban him from television, and then when they realized how much money they were going to make, then it was okay.
and
And
that's
the
the
same
problem.
with rap. I mean,
It's always been about the money. It's never really been about
always,
the
yeah.
art form, right?
Yeah, and that's
And this is
why like I said, there's certain rap artists that I'll listen to because I think they're part of the art form, and it's not because they're commercially viable or they're the biggest artists on the planet. It's because I'm really into what they're saying, and if I
and
have somebody explain to me what the importance is of the music of the lyrics, then either I don't have the context to understand it, or they're making the message too obtuse or vague.
yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's contextual stuff. I mean, you have to be able to relate to the stuff that the singer has. I mean, that song, for example, we're gonna put that out on Valentine's Day, but that's not a Valentine's Day song.
It is not.
It certainly ain't about loving anybody.
Well, it's about maybe loving somebody that you kind of feel like maybe they also love somebody else.
Maybe they're not loving you
So,
back in the same
yeah,
way.
my way
Um,
of my way of explaining it is it's a song about love that goes triangular.
yes, yes, very much so, very much so. Um, I'm sorry about that. I think I just had one of those notifications come through, and I thought I had my notifications shut off, and for some reason my notifications are going off here. So if that blanked anything out, I
Oh, no,
apologize,
no.
everybody.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to the top of the hour, so we barely scratched the tip of the iceberg here, and we maybe got part of a layer of onion off you, right?
At least the skin.
I'm really glad that you came on the show tonight, George. It's helped me to gain a little more insight into you, what makes you tick. One thing I'm going to say to you, and then you can say what you want people to remember about you until the next time you're on the show, is that one thing I want to say is that what you just said there about the art form is one of the reasons why I believe you belong on our record label, and that is because we put art ahead of commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Art is the most important thing to me. It's a legacy. It's something we can pass on to future generations, current generations, and it's the only thing that will live when we're dead and gone.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the few things that I can pass down to my kids, other than a couple of bass guitars and my upright bass. But to be able to say I wrote a song for you, or here's the music that I did, and you guys can listen to it when I'm gone. and play it for your kids and things like that. And to be able to, like for me, I've got a couple of songs. My two favorite songs that I've written were about people in my family that uh, I didn't record them to make money. I recorded them so that I could express to people how I feel about
Right.
members of my family.
I think what we need to do is a twofold thing here with the release of Colleen. I've been thinking about this, and we're going to tell people about this because I want to create a buzz about this. If we were to release that, I think we need to get that video made, because I think the video would really pull people in, especially if we create a great visual of it. And my goal would to make that go viral so that people would want to go and visit Colleen's pub.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be cool if we had people from the West Coast or people who wanted to fly into Halifax just to go to her pub?
I think she'd like it.
She's in Halifax, right?
Dartmouth, yeah, which is just it's a suburb of Halifax, yeah. So.
Yeah, so she's in Dartmouth, and so the cool thing about that is if that were to happen, that would put, make Colleen's a famous place.
I would love that.
And the thing is that we should create a jingle version of it to advertise her pub.
Yeah, I thought about doing that too, actually. Well, at one point she was like, she goes, I'll sell it at the bar. I was like, honestly, I said, what it would cost me to make CD singles.
No, let's get people to do digital downloads.
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they can download it for $1 a track off our site.
Yeah.
Right? They can download it in high-res audio right off our website. So we could offer it up off our website, and people could digitally download it. Cheaper than a cup of coffee. You're not going to pee it out in a half an hour, and it's going to last you a lifetime.
True enough. Yeah.
I mean, what's better than that, right? It's cheaper than any coffee, and it's 100%. We might as well jump on the bandwagon with this. It's 100% Canadian.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like beer and back bacon. Meant to go together.
75% Canadian. I still got to give 25% to Dolly.
There you go. That's right. No, actually, should probably only get a smaller fraction than that when we do the licensing. They just go with the standard these days.
Yeah.
So if it gets approved, you'll still make a decent amount of royalties off that song if it gets famous. Who knows? It could end up in a movie soundtrack.
Yeah. You never know.
That would be funny.
Make a movie about Colleen.
That's right. It's great having these conversations. I hope you come back on the show, and I really want to thank you for coming on here, George.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me. I really do. So
right. All right. And you're in what city are you in Halifax?
I live in Lower Sackville.
Okay.
Which is like kind of a northern suburb.
Okay.
I spend a lot of my time playing either in Dartmouth, Halifax, here and there. And it's the thing about Nova Scotia is you can be across the province in an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like having to tour across Canada.
Bad. No, not at all. I remember living in BC and living in Abbotsford, and I drove an hour and a half every day each way just to get to work. So, driving an hour to a gig is child's play out here. So
that was like that used to be like the bar circuit in southwestern Ontario.
Yeah,
like between Windsor and Toronto, there were a ton of venues to play. There still are quite a few to play between those between those cities.
I used to play a fair bit. There was a lot of country guys played out of Burlington, and used to go and play down like Burlington, Hamilton area all the time. There's a ton of great venues, even
at
back in
Corktown
when Lulu's was happening in Kitchener.
Right.
Man,
Exactly. Well, listen, I want to thank you for joining us on the show tonight. This has been the Indie Show. Our guest co-host this week has been none other than George L. Wolf from Lower Sackville in Nova Scotia, Halifax. Yeah. And we are going to have him back at some point soon. And this has been the Indie Show. I'm Kenny. You are not. Have a great end of your